Why is this man still walking free? The officer's words cut through the station like a blade. His eyes locked on a young black man seated quietly in the corner, waiting for routine paperwork. But what the officer didn't know was that the next file he opened wouldn't destroy the man's life. It would destroy his own. The precinct was cold that morning, not in temperature but in spirit. The air carried the weight of suspicion, of whispered prejudice, dressed as procedure. Behind the desk sat Officer Kane, a man whose badge had once been a symbol of justice, but had long since become a weapon of pride. Across from him sat Marcus, a man in his late 20s. His clothes were simple, his posture calm, his eyes tired yet steady. He was there for something small, a clerical mix-up over his driver's license. But Kane didn't see a citizen with a question. He saw only a color, a story he thought he already knew, a wound you cannot see. Marcus had lived his whole life, carrying the invisible weight of assumptions. From the stares in grocery stores to the lowered voices in boardrooms, the message was always the same. Prove yourself, or we won't believe you belong. He had done everything right. Studied hard, worked long shifts, cared for his younger sister after their mother passed. His hands bore the roughness of labor. His heart bore the softness of patience. But no matter how much he gave, the world often answered with suspicion. Today was supposed to be simple, a quick visit, a paper signed, back to work. But prejudice has a way of finding even the quietest man. The officers. Poison. Kane had worn the badge for 15 years. He told himself he was upholding order. But inside, he nursed grudges, fed by years of unchecked bias. His voice was sharp, his laughter cruel, his sense of authority swollen. When Marcus's file came across his desk, Kane's eyes narrowed. He saw an opportunity not to help, but to humiliate. With a smirk, he leaned forward. Looks like you've had issues before, he said, flipping through papers with exaggerated suspicion. Marcus swallowed, his jaw tightening. Sir, I'm only here about a license correction. But Kane wasn't listening. He wasn't searching for truth. He was searching for dirt. The silence of the room, others in the precinct, looked away. Some knew Kane's habits. They had heard his remarks in the locker room, seen his smirk when pulling over drivers who fit a certain description. Yet silence had always been easier than confrontation. And so, Marcus sat alone, facing not just one officer, but the heavy weight of a system that allowed such men to flourish. His calm was not weakness. It was resistance. It was the steady heartbeat of a man refusing to let hate dictate his breath. Escalation. Kane slammed the folder shut and stood. I think we need to open a deeper investigation here. Something tells me you're hiding more than a license error. Marcus's lips parted, but no words came. He had learned that sometimes speaking only fed the fire. He sat still, hands folded, eyes unwavering. The room was silent except for the sound of Kane pulling open a locked drawer. Inside were a file of classified cases, records he had no authority to touch without clearance. Yet he yanked one out, slapping it on the desk, as though the weight of paper could justify his suspicion. The shift no one expected. But as Kane flipped open the folder, his confident smirk faltered. His eyes scanned the page, once, then twice, the color draining from his face. The file was not about Marcus. It was about him. Officer Kane. Inside was a termination order drafted, signed, and sealed. Complaints of misconduct, records of prejudice, testimonies from fellow officers who had finally found the courage to speak. The file had been scheduled for delivery to Internal Affairs that very week. And in his arrogance, Kane had pulled it out himself, in full view of witnesses. The power of dignity, Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to. The truth had spoken for him. One officer whispered, "That's his own file." Another leaned closer, reading the bold letters. Termination pending. Kane's hand trembled. The badge on his chest felt heavier than iron. His authority, once unquestioned, now lay shattered by his own hand. Marcus's calm gaze did not waver, and in that silence, the entire room shifted. Dignity is not defended with noise. It is proven in silence. It reveals the truth. The fall of pride. Kane tried to close the folder, but the whispers had already spread. His superiors were alerted. The evidence could not be hidden. The man who had used suspicion as his weapon had, in a single careless act, signed his own downfall. The very system he had twisted now turned its eyes on him, and for the first time in years, Kane felt fear not of orders but of justice. Marcus stood slowly, adjusting his jacket. His movements were calm, controlled, steady. He turned to leave, but not before looking Kane in the eye. You opened a file to chain me. Instead, you unchained yourself. The climax by the end of that day, Kane's badge was no longer on his chest. His locker was emptied, his authority stripped. The precinct that once ignored his prejudice now watched him walk out. No applause, no farewell, only the cold echo of boots on the tile floor. Marcus stepped into the sunlight outside, the air fresher than before. He was not vindictive. He carried no smile of victory. He simply walked forward, the same man he had always been, calm, steady, and unbroken. And yet, his silence had changed everything. Resolution and reflection. The story spread beyond the precinct, whispered in the city as both a warning and a lesson. A man had tried to destroy another with lies, and instead destroyed himself with truth. When dignity stands still, prejudice collapses under its own weight. Marcus went back to his life not as a hero, seeking recognition, but as a man who had proven what countless others already knew. That justice is not always loud, but it is always waiting. And Kane, stripped of power, was left to face the reality that respect cannot be demanded by force. It can only be earned. This story is not just about one man and one officer. It is about the battles fought silently every day, the ones where dignity, patience, and truth are the only weapons. If this story moved you, share it. Tell someone that prejudice has an expiration date, and that truth always finds its way forward. Comment below. Do you believe silence can sometimes be the most powerful answer? And remember, every story we share here is a reminder that strength often hides not in force, but in quiet, unshakable honor. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the unseen strength within ordinary lives.